security call 1985 here for another vlog. I'm at part two. I'm driving here, picking up my son. So I got him there. The class I was referring to as a great class was with Craig Douglas. It's, managing unknown contacts. And that's a real good class. It's, almost 3 days. It's like 20 some hours. You do Friday night like 3, 4 hours, and Saturday and Sunday, 8, 9 hours each, depending on how you get through. But just, dealing with how to talk to people, creating distance, like you're pumping gas. Somebody comes, starts walking up. You say, hey, well, hold up a second. It's 2 in the morning. Something's not right. Somebody shouldn't just be walking up. Can I help you? But try to keep them at a distance. Say, sir, ma'am, what can I do for you? I need you to stay back, though. And you can lie about things too. Like, there's nothing saying you can't lie. Like, hey, I got COVID or something. I just don't want you to come near me. I'm really sick. Things like that. And that'll keep people back from you, that you have, an illness. Just saying, hey, I have HIV and I'm bleeding. Who cares what you say, Don't matter. Just, you're just creating distance, and it doesn't have to be something truthful, you know? So just do that. Try, or just say, get back. I'm not interested, You're not there to make friends. You're, like I said, you're there at the convenience store, or you're walking downtown or whatever you're at, some place where people shouldn't be walking up by you. So you create that distance, and you say, hey, get back. You ask them what they want, if they want a buck or something, just say, hey, I don't have any cash on me right now. I'm not against giving people money. I think there's charities. Some people that are homeless or something, 4 or 5 bucks makes all the world to them. And, I've always looked at it, if they're going to take that 4 or 5 bucks and buy a 40-ounce beer and that makes them happy, and I have the money, whatever. But you don't have to either. I mean, I'm not, I don't always get money either, because you could tell some people are just, making stuff off. So just to be like, no, I'm not interested. I don't have any cash up or whatever. Or if you want to say, hey, I'll buy you some food, I'll go in the gas station there. I got to pay anyways with my card. If you want a sandwich, I'll get you a sandwich or something. You can do that. But like you said, you don't have to. If you're increasing your chances by doing it of something happening. If dude doesn't really want a sandwich, he just really wants to get you close, and he's gonna grab a hold of you and do something. So, and then, we did things like that in that class. It's a great class. It's an expensive class. It's $700 for the class. No work paid for it luckily, but Greg Douglas, I mean, that guy's like the guy for that stuff in it. His assistant instructor, which I can't remember his name, but they have they have YouTube pages and stuff, and they talk about carrying, different fixed blade knives and stuff like that for like real close in fighting. That's what we did, man. Like, we just learned real close in nasty fighting. Like, you're wrestling around and you carry like a fixed blade on your waistband or something. You can get it out and, poke it somewhere. It's going to cause the guy to get off you or have a bad day. You try using your firearm, but we used or not airsoft, but paint guns, paint on, Parker locks. And it's just really hard when you're fighting with somebody on the ground to get a gun out, trying to fire it, because you knock the gun out of battery where you press it against them too close and it pushes the slide back, and then you got a dead gun. Or the gun a malfunction and you only have one hand. It's really hard when you're fighting somebody to try to clear a malfunction. So kind of, knives and pepper spray kind of shine there, I recommend always carrying pepper spray. Like you said, if guy gets too close, you keep telling him to get back, spray him. Just say, hey man, I got spray, man. I'm gonna spray you if you need one more step. And give strong verbal commands. And just, man, right above, hit him right above the eyebrow area, and that'll. I've been pepper sprayed numerous times. Pepper sprayed a lot of people working in a jail, and it's effective. It doesn't work on everybody, so you always have to be prepared. Also, that pepper spray might enrage them more and cause them to fight through it. Because I've seen that most times I've ever been punched is after I pepper sprayed somebody. I've got drilled a couple times. I sprayed a murderer one time in a cell, and the nicest guy, and he just snapped one night, just, crazy. He did some bad things. Yeah. He killed like somebody that was testifying against him and his buddy or something, all kinds of federal cases. real nice guy, but one night, and that happens, inmates, they just snap. I got 60 years and I'm not gonna take this anymore, or I got life. It's like kicking the door and you go in there, and you try to calm them down, and they just don't want to calm down. And I'm spraying them, but I sprayed that guy, and he drilled me right, he jabbed me right in the nose, like eyes watering. I was like, oh, stunned me for a second. So it happens. I mean, they say pepper spray works on like 87-ish% people that you spray. So there's people, especially like convicts that gone, done prison time and stuff and sprayed, gosh, for numerous 10, 20 times probably in their life. And they've just built an immunity kind of to it and they just know what it is. And those guys are just going to fight through it. So you got to be prepared for that. But and having a nice little fixed blade knife somewhere, they sell some real nice ones. Reversed edge knives, a little pricey, but they're high quality knives made in the U.S. Just teach you how to roll around. They give you like fake knives. You kind of learn how to, how I'm going to do this. I'm in this situation. Great, great training, I think. And you do scenarios where they give you kind of, they'll set you up like where you're at like a gas station or something, and then the other people can kind of do what they want, how they want to run the scenario, and you got to react to it, and it's great training because people are in that class weren't trying to be goofy. They would give you like real scenarios stuff, and then you'd have to get out of it, and it's tough, Especially once it goes, once you go to the ground, you don't have some sort of training like if you like a Greco wrestler or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, or even have some like judo and Krav Maga training, it's a lot better. But sometimes even that, all that training goes out the window when you're just rolling around with somebody who wants to hurt you. It's not like the UFC, where there's kind of rules still, and it kind of dictates how the fight's going to go a little bit. This is, you fight for your life, and it's really tough. So just remember, if you train, if you UFC or professional fighter, it's good, but a lot of that stuff goes out the window in a real fight for your life. People are, they go for your eyes, your groin. They try to rip your eyes. They'll try to rip your eye out or something, or stab you or shoot you. So you got to react to all that. So just it's good. It's good training. If you can get into one of his classes, he travels all over the U.S. And like I said, it's pricey, but you're also investing in your safety, and you got to do it. If you're gonna how to be prepared. And then you do the scenarios. Well, then we do more close in shooting, like how to shoot from the hip real fast and do multiple hits and stuff like that. Real good firearms training. Kind of you kind of have to have some knowledge of firearms as more of an expert. Like you have to have some true more than just a CCW class or something, to do it. Or they won't let you. They'll just have you stand off to the side and watch. And then like the final, you learn like gun disarms, you learn gun retention, which is important. Some people like to carry open carry. I don't like that. If you, I mean, I believe you have the right to. I support 100%. If you want to open carry, like RPG 7, well, across your back, I support that 100%. But it's not always the best idea. You're showing your hand, playing cards basically. You open carry. If some dude you're standing in a convenience store and dude comes in to rob it, and you're standing there with a 1911 in a leather holster and like 4 mags on the other side, that dude's probably gonna drop her first, unless you get him. But that's you're lowering your chances. So it's important to you know remember that. So I think you should conceal carry. If you're walking around like your property, or you're on a, you have a lot of property, you're hunting, something like that, yeah, open carry, it's more comfortable. Who cares? But like I said, if you're in town and stuff like that, just conceal it for that time being. Don't let anybody know you got a gun. So, and we did all of that, like a weapons retention, how to get your gun back, different things, stuff like that. And then the final thing of the class, which is really intense is you're fighting in a vehicle. You get a firearm and a knife, and you take turns in the roles, but you'll be like you know, a driver basically, and people pull a gun on you, and you got to fight. You got to try to knock the gun away, fight. Because usually when people carjack you and they don't have you get out of the car, they want you driving somewhere. Chances are they're gonna kill you, especially if they don't have a mask on or something like that where you can identify them. You're probably gonna die. Not 100%, but I would say I would bet on it more than not. So you got to do what you got to do. Like, you could speed up, slow down, and slam on the brakes. Jerk the person forward if they have a gun to you, might move it, and then you just fight. Or if they don't have a seatbelt on. Another thing you could think about doing that it sucks, and it's risky. You could drive into something, at a lower speed, like 30 miles an hour. If they don't have a seatbelt on, it's probably gonna still throw them through the windshield, and it's gonna hurt you probably too. But it's better than dying. I don't say do it at like 70 miles an hour because you're gonna probably die too. But do lower speeds, or you could run it into a ditch or something. But you just want to try to get away out of that vehicle. If not, fighting that vehicle. If, like I said, you got a knife or something, just try to grab that gun and just start poking holes in them if you can. But it's real hard fighting in that car, because you're no room. It's claustrophobic, and it's hard. It was good to get that like under your belt. Kind of, I've never done anything like that before, and it was very useful to just see how people would do it and different people and how you would try to get out of the scenarios. Really good training, and yeah, I was into the training, but like it's Craig Douglas. It's Shivworks is the company, and it's like managing unknown contacts. He does one, and then he does one just for knives, which is like 3 days of just basically knife fighting. Real intense class, real hard class, but great, great training. He's a really good guy, former police officer, retired, I think, now and stuff. He really knows his stuff. He's gone in multiple disciplines of, self defense, so he can really tell you what works and what doesn't work. The old school like karate stuff like that rarely works. But if you combine multiple disciplines, then you can become dangerous. If you can strike and deal with stuff on the ground, stuff like that, you're real dangerous. Like said, wrestler or jiu-jitsu, even judo or Krav Maga, which is like throws and stuff like that's really effective at times. But it doesn't always work, so you have to be prepared. There was guys in that class that, were really high out in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and once you get on the ground with somebody that really just wants to hurt you, and it's not like a sanctioned fight, it doesn't always work. So, but you have better. It's better to um have that knowledge because it'll work more times than not. But there are certain times it won't. So, do get training like that. The more training you can do, the better. And like I said, people can't. It's hard to afford, and it sucks. You have to give time, but you just want to be able to protect yourself, your family. It's just this world we live in today. It's crazy. But how people just don't care about human life anymore. And there have been other times, obviously, that there have been where they haven't cared about human life. Back in the 60s was real bad, 70s, stuff like that. But today it's just, it's all over, and we're seeing and just killing people. Charlie Kirk, killed a guy for his beliefs. How horrible is he? How horrible either way, whether it would be just as horrible if that person was on the left that got murdered. I mean, you're going to kill somebody for your beliefs? It's insane. Insane. And Charlie Kirk was a good human being just because some of the stuff, he said you didn't like. He's a good God-fearing man, and just because you didn't agree with him, they killed him. It's crazy. It's sickening, honestly, that they will do that to somebody. Like, I don't get it. I just don't get it. So, taking that, you know, doing that to human beings is just crazy. That, we live in a country where we're free to exercise our beliefs, and then you're going to start killing people for it. I mean, what does that accomplish? Nothing. It's disgusting. And if you think that's okay to use violence on either side on a group just because of their beliefs, you're a disgusting person too. Sorry. It's just, it's just the way it is. Just because we don't agree, we at the end of the day, we walk away from the debate, alive. And we just deal with it. So I guess I don't get it. So another reason why you just need to be prepared. Because, all this political violence, you see it, people driving through cities and stuff, there'll be a protest, and, they're pulling people out of car, surrounding them. That's why I carry, a big can of pepper spray. If somebody surrounds me, I'm just going to start hosing people, and, they start trying to pull me out of the car, other things are going to start happening that they're not going to like, and I'm not advocating violence, but you have every right to defend yourself, and anybody that wanted to do that, sorry about your luck. You are on the ground with a couple extra problems in you. You made that decision. Quit trying to hurt people because you don't agree with them, It's just crazy. And, I'm not trying to be political right now, but I'm saying too, I lean right, obviously, and I support that side, but I also wouldn't want to hurt somebody on the left just because of their beliefs. It's dumb, and it's horrible to do that to another person just because of something they believe in. Just agree to disagree. That's not what I wanted. That's not how I believe it, or whatever. It's just. But yeah, to just do that to some person because of it's just horrible. We deserve all the bad that happens to you afterwards, or if you try to do it to somebody. So, but that's another thing, talking about vehicle safety, making sure the car's good, prepared, you have a lot of gas in case you get stuck somewhere. I always recommend get one of those big cans of pepper spray, like multiple ounces, and that way you can try to, spray, make a nice little wall of fire, pepper spray, and try to get through people. But, you got to stay in your car. And like I said, if they start trying to pull you out of your car, you got to go. Because that's an aggressive act. That's a deadly force situation. Because if you get pulled out of that car, you don't know what's going to happen to you. They may just steal your car. They may start stomping your head like the LA riots. That guy got hit with, the truck driver. If you go back to the LA riots where they pulled the guy out of the truck and just started throwing bricks at his hand, almost killed him. How he didn't die, I'll never know, but it's nuts. So, have your vehicle ready, have supplies in it, be prepared for anything, and that's the key. So, at the end of this video, I will be back, and we'll do another one. And Security God 1985 app. Give me a like, share, and follow. It really helps the channel, so it really helps me out, and I appreciate it.